And I'm going to spot like this. So we're going to talk about finishing paintings today, which I think is a really great idea. And one of the things I really want to talk about is fur. Because I'm noticing I've just been teaching all week, and I want to show you, I'm seeing things that people are doing with fur that really don't work. So I'm going to review, I'm just going to use this painting because it's already up here. This is a painting from yesterday.
An older painting from
An older
yesterday.
painting from yesterday,
How
right?
many years from yesterday?
A lot, Sandra. Oh my God, a lot, Diana, so many. So, so let's talk about fur. Oh, wait, maybe it's better. Well, anyway, I'll put this up here. Maybe I'll here, do this. So here, and hair is the same. So we make the same mistakes when it comes to hair. All right, so here, I'm gonna put some paint on my canvas so I can show you. So the mistake we make is that we make two major mistakes. One is that we think we can paint every hair. And so we paint all the hairs we think we're seeing, and we paint them all going in the same direction. All right, and we add little marks. I'm gonna show you exactly what gets done, so you can really see this. So one of the mistakes that we make is to use this tiny little brush and to do this. And to do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We think we can paint every hair. We think that this is simplifying. Here, wait. I'm going to bring it down so you can really see it. So this is I've seen almost everybody in the class make this mistake. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? So when you look at like this little goat, for example, and you look at the hair here, I see people do this. I'm going to paint right on here. 1, 2, 3. This is what I see people do. This does not convey. Number one, you can't get all the hair. And number two, you've got your hair all going the same direction. It's the same size. This is not conveying fur effectively. The other mistake I see people make all the time, and I'm going to move this here so that you can really see it. So this is a sheep that we were working on in another class. Oh, darn it. Let's see here, too shiny. Yes, there, you can see it better here. Okay, so the other thing I see people do is, and actually here, there's two mistakes that people make here. The other mistake that people make is when they see like a dark area like this with lighter furry streaks. This is the instinct. The instinct is to take your lighter paint like this, make it light, and then try to add, so this is compounding mistakes, right? Dark like this. So this is what I see people do all the time. That, as you can tell, that doesn't look at all like what's happening here. So what's really happening here? What's really happening here is that everything is darker than you think it is. So we have to start with this dark base. And then we lay the lights on top, but less in this little sun pattern, like you're doing, like you're a little kid, you know, doing like a sun, and more paying attention to the dark spaces kind of in between. So even the lights are darker, and I'm more interested in these kind of clumps. So if you can see this little triangle here and here, they aren't in the same place and they aren't the same size. So what I'm really paying attention to is where the light edge. So I guess what I'm leading up to is I'm paying attention to where light edges meet dark edges. And when I can see a light or a dark shape, that's where I focus on bringing my edges in. This doesn't work. Do you guys get this? Does anybody get this? Does this seem familiar to you that you do this? So this isn't going to work. This light area is actually much darker than it seems, than it appears. So when we work on our, and almost everything is dark, right? So when we work on, and then if I come in here to sort of make matters, I've got a light area right next to it, right? So I work on the area, sort of adding detail and paying attention to the shape of the detail in the area where light meets dark. Right now, this is because these hairs kind of come over everywhere, I need to kind of I need to make that vanish, that hard line between soft and hard, right? So I need to pay attention to what the hairs are doing when these light hairs meet on the dark surface meet a lighter area. So you'll be busy doing this. So when we're working with fur, that's really what we're doing. We're not trying to do something that looks like a little sun. We're not doing this, right? We're not doing this. I don't want to paint on it because I don't want to obscure it. We're not doing this. That doesn't work. So let's practice what we are doing. Does anybody have questions about that? Does that seem to start to address, does anybody find themselves doing that? Hi, Nina. Hi, Janet.
Hi, Leah. Yeah,
Hi.
that's what I would do.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's what you would do. So just know, Nina, you're not alone. This is what everybody does. So, for those, so Nina, were you in last week's class? Did you paint the first half of this goat?
I didn't. I missed it. So
All right,
I might.
so
yeah.
you may just want to, we have the video of the first recording up. You may want to just watch, or you may want to start drawing your goat, right, on canvas while we work on this second. So I'm working on finishing paintings this week, just in general. So
Okay.
you tell me, if you're happy watching, that is a great way to do this. And if you feel like you want something to do, let me know and I'll give you some ideas. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
It
Perfect.
might be better for me to watch, I think.
I think so too. I think so too. I think you're at the beginning of this and you didn't do the first part. And I think there's a lot to learn by watching. I think that's great. But give me a shout if you want some ideas about how to do things. All right. Okay. So I have this in black and white because I think it's easier to see a couple of things that are, I think the challenges with this goat, before we get started painting, the challenges with this goat, I have the goat in color. So let's look at the goat in color first. Whoops. So you see, the goat has definitely a distinct, even though this is a dark goat, this goat has a distinct light and dark side, right? And they're darks. And just to make that, the blue areas are where all the light is. It's a fantastic photo. The blue areas are where all the light is coming from. In which direction is the light coming from?
From the left.
Yeah, the left, right? We can see that really clearly. By the way, you guys are getting very good at that. So I want you to see how that translates to black and white. This is almost white. So in the darks. So I think one of the confusing things that happen is we get this idea that this is a dark goat and then we make everything too dark. But in reality, this goat has dark and light edges. And in this particular case, all the dark areas are warm and brown and all the light areas are kind of cool and blue. So that's one thing that's going to help us kind of as we continue to work on this. To see what's happening. I think the first thing that I would like to do with my goat, I noticed that my goat is too light on this side. So one of the things that I would like to do is darken the goat. I'm going to use a glaze to do that. So for those of you who don't know glazing, Glazing is a thin, I'm about to demonstrate it. Glazing, and you're welcome to do this along with me. Glazing is like a thin, transparent layer of color that uses a lot of water. It's like kind of like using acrylic as if it were watercolor. You can do it with oil too, to like tone a painting an entire color, or you can glaze areas of it. So so what's interesting about it is it can do a lot of things to your painting. It's not super controllable, meaning I can't always tell you what's going to happen. And you're not going to like all the areas. I see kitty tail. I see kitty tail. You're not always going to like what's going to happen. But what's awesome about glazing is that it can carry a lot of texture. Because I want this to be dark and kind of warm, I think I'm going to glaze this. Let's see. I am going to glaze this. What am I going to do? Where's my blue? You're over here. I've been working on I mostly work in oil these days, but right now I'm working on an acrylic painting. So my paints are all spread out. I'm going to mix an almost black, warm. I'm going to mix a warm black from, does anybody remember the colors I like to use to make a warm black? What colors?
Yeah.
I've used them before.
Marine.
Ultramarine and burnt
Yeah.
sienna.
Burnt umber. Yes, yes.
Burnt
Excellent.
umber.
A+, you two. You guys are awesome. That's just great. Okay, so let me find my ultramarine. Here we are. So I'm getting some ultramarine blue. Here, I'll scoot this over just a little bit. These were my demoing colors. So here's the thing. Almost everything, even on a white animal like this, everything is much darker at its base, and the lights tend to lay on top. So our tendency is to want to go the other direction. We want to lay the lights in, and then we think we can sort of sprinkle in the darks, but it doesn't work like that. Almost everything is dark. So I'm going to mix, and I can't find my palette knife right now, so I'm just going to use my brush. You can use your palette knife if you want to do this. I'm going to mix brown and blue together till I get something pretty strong. And then here, I'll pop my other video up so you can see my desk here. What? There we go. Okay. So I just want you to be able to see the motion. So here I am. Here's my water. I'm making this very watery. Oops, I better move this so that I don't get it on things. And now I'm pulling. You can see I've got so much water on my brush. So just to give you an example, if I want to do what's called loading my brush with paint, that's what it looks like. Can you see? This is what it looks like. See, there's a lot of paint on the brush, but I'm doing a glaze. So I want there to be almost no paint on my brush, like visible piles of paint. I want just a watery layer that's dark. And I'm going to go over this whole thing. So when I first taught this to, I've taught this to some people who are like, oh, it's like, you know, putting a filter, using a filter on your camera to turn something a different color. Or you know how they have all those funny preset filter settings like Arctic or denim, or I don't know, whatever the dumb things they call that stuff is. So it's a little bit like that. What's nice is this color can really unify. You can see, I can still see everything. I can still see all my paint, but everything's been kicked back a notch. And you're probably like, oh my God. Okay, so I'm going to take a picture of this. I'm still not liking what's happening. What happens if I do that? Is that a little bit better? Is that better or worse? When I turned off that light. Here, I'll show you again. Nope, that's worse. That's better. Ugh, criminy. It's really, light's not great today. I'll just keep moving over until I find good light. Here we are. Oh, I don't understand why today the light is crappy and yesterday it wasn't.
Is it the same time of day?
It's the same time of day.
Oh,
I've never had this much problem. Maybe it's, I added a new light, which I think might be messing with things. I just can't seem to win here. Okay.
it's shiny, so you might want to put a filter over your lamp, like
I have filters over all my lamps.
Oh,
Nothing is looking, believe me, nothing is going directly onto, nothing is showing directly on here.
sorry.
Yeah, it's just the nature of the light this morning. I don't know, really. Sorry, guys. Here, I'll take a picture so you can see what this looks like. Yeah, well, this has to. I wonder if that's better. Is that a little better? It's cooler. Nope. Nope. Okay, let's see what I can get here. Give me a second. Yep. Bring it down. Maybe I can bring it down. Okay, well, definitely this can at least be photographed better. So you can see how this has changed things. I don't really know. So weird. I'm sorry, you guys. Give me just a minute. This is never, okay. Well, that's where we are right now. So there it is. So now I've made everything darker. And now I feel like I can start to lay on my lights, my lighter colors. So as a reminder, here's all my colors. Here's my little palette here. I wonder if I moved this whole thing. Hang on, let's see. We're gonna try moving this all the way over here. Maybe this will help. That's a little bit better. Okay, so so here, keep following the light, which keeps moving. All right, so I have this black and white to remind me. The black and white is here, and I'll send a picture of it so that you've got it with you. I don't have room really to show it to you, but you can have it. And here's the color picture. So you can see the actual colors that we're working with. There we go. Okay. So what I can immediately see is that I still need to get more darks, in here. Like this is a little bit too light, right? And the space is too much. So I am going to work with my big brush here, and I'm going to mix some burnt umber, more burnt umber. So instead of being watery, I'm going to try and get like actual paint on my brush. You see it, you can see that there's actual paint on my brush here. And I'm going to kind of brush it in a little bit more. So I can see, if you look on your source here, I can see that this light area is much lighter. So I'm kind of trying to thin this out. And I'm doing that by taking the edge of my brush and kind of brushing in into the area where dark meets light.
Leah, you're still on the bigger brush, right? You've
Yeah,
not
I'm still
moved-
on the bigger brush right now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't want too much detail. You could use but you know what? You could totally use a smaller brush
Okay.
if you wanted to. And I can see that really distinctly, this area is darker and this area is darker. So you see how I'm kind of going back in and I'm darkening this. And now I'm going to go everywhere where the goat is dark, since I have this dark. So there's parts of the ear that are darker, right? Up here and over here. There's parts of the face that are darker. The ear is a bit lighter over here, but still dark in some areas. He's kind of dark up here. And see how I'm kind of, so I'm also looking, once again, I'm looking at the motion of these kind of bits of fur that are poking out. And I can see them because they're hitting the white horn. So that's where I'm focusing my attention. I'm not, once again, I'm not doing this. I am not doing this. Stroke, stroke. See, that doesn't look right. I'm not doing that. Let me get that off. If I am not doing that, let me get that off. I am kind of looking at more at like, there's a piece of fur that's going this way. There's a patch that's going this way. I'm looking more at that sort of motion and trying to capture that in my darks. I'm looking at this, see if there's any more darks. It gets kind of dark right next to the eye, which I think will help me showcase my eye. It's dark here. It's dark under here. Now I've just switched to my smaller brush because I happen to have it in my hand, showing you what not to do. So you can switch to your smaller brush if you want to here. Everything's still a little bit murky. Right. And notice things look kind of pushed back, but also notice they look a little bit more unified. So there's light areas I'm going to need to bring forward, but my dark areas now are kind of solidified. They look a little bit better. So now I can focus on the light areas, and particularly these blue areas. I'm looking for, I'm going to want more ultramarine blue. What do I do with my ultramarine blue? And you can watch rather than try to do it yourself. Or if you feel like, oh, this gives you the idea of what you want to do, definitely go for it and do it. I'm looking for my blue. I just put my blue down. Ah, here we are. Okay, more ultramarine blue. So I'm going to add more ultramarine blue to my palette up here. And I might add a little bit of white to my palette too. And I already have burnt sienna down here. So I'm going to use those three, maybe some yellow, but most definitely I'm going to be using burnt sienna. And now we're in at Rashmi, this is a really good point. Now we're in like smaller areas. So I have this little flat brush. Notice it's significantly smaller than my 1 inch. Whoops, come here. There we go. Here, wait. Right, so I'm grabbing this little flat brush, getting it wet with water. And I'm going to mix a blue, a light blue for the light side. But my blue isn't just going to be blue. It's going to include a little bit of burnt sienna. It's going to include a little bit of the complement in with it, a little bit of orange, and then some white to lighten it. And if I feel like it's too gray, I can add a little bit more blue. But I want just a touch of that orange in there. So that I have a blue, not too much, because I can see it, the orange kind of overwhelms it and makes it a bit too gray. But I want, my blue is not like, it's pretty and it's vibrant. Then I'm going to add the sort of light blue area here. That's interesting. This does not look like the blue. Now I'm going to try something. As I lay this down, I see that this ultramarine blue is a little bit warm. So I'm going to try a phthalo blue.
Yeah, we had added phthalo blue as well last time.
What's that?
I think we had added phthalo blue as
Did
well.
we in the other class? Good memory, darling. Glad there's somebody here. So yeah, okay, so I'm just doing my mixing all over again. As if it never happened. All right, so let's try this again. Let's try phthalo. Well, at least you know my process is consistent. If I can't remember what I did from class to class. So, oh yeah, that's much better. Okay, thanks, Rashmi, you're right. So we are not going to use ultramarine blue. We are going to use phthalo blue, a touch of burnt sienna, and white. Oh yeah, that's the color. That's the color. Yeah, baby, that is the color. So I'm going to take the lightest version of this color, which has a fair amount of white in it. Notice as I lay it down, I don't really see that it's light enough. So I'm going back in with more white and then just an even more white. So I do a lot of what's called mixing on the canvas. I do a lot of mixing so I can get my colors in. So there's my light blue, and then it's slightly darker. So I'm going to add a little bit more of the blue color back here. So I'm going to just add that into the back and then here. I'm doing a closer crop, so there's not as much. I still feel like that's a little bit here. Yeah, add more blue in there. So really the widest area is kind of up here. And notice I'm keeping some of my dark in there. So now I'm going to mix just basic phthalo blue and burnt sienna with no white in it. That's going to be the dark part of the goat. And see how I'm brushing in, and maybe, yep, that'll be good. And see how I'm brushing it in over the edges of the light. Like I'm almost tapping. This is a very good brush to use for this process. And so that I don't have anything solid, so that my lines between my light blue and my dark blue, light blue and my dark areas of the back of the goat are kind of soft. So I'm tapping, I want there to be this light transition. I want it to be there. I just went in and put in some light. And now I'm pushing it into the dark. To do this, both the sides have to be light and dark. So you notice I'm only kind of working one side here. Soft. So instead of like painting all this different fur, I'm really just painting I'm making a kind of ragged edge with the edge of my brush here. Now, where else do I see this color? Where else do I see this color? I see this up in the goat space, a little bit up here. Right? There's a little bit of this sort of blue orange with a touch of white up here. It's kind of this very light version. So there's blue and orange with a lot of white. It isn't just blue. See up here, there's this kind of little light area. I might have to wait till it dries to get the absolute brightest. And I'm doing the same thing. I'm kind of brushing up, making that edge a little bit more raggedy. I'm going to have to go over this one more time, and I'll probably do that with my pointed brush. But for right now, that's okay. So the other thing you need to get used to is this idea that your light areas, that the areas, right, that are the areas between light and dark, they can be darker in acrylic before you go lighter. And now I'm looking, just trying to see if I can get this guy in here. Here, I'll move this in. Yeah, just. So I'm starting to kind of pull out those lights, but it's still, it's pretty dark, which is okay. Part of the reason it looks so dark is that my background has been darkened by the glaze. And now I'm going to take that blue, orange, and white mixture, phthalo blue, orange and white, and kind of brush it in on top. And notice, so this area is dry. So now I'm using a different technique called, oops, and there's a little bit of white I want to blend in there. I don't like having that pop out like that. Here, so I'm going to go back in and darken that. So I can actually do what's called a dry brush. So if this area is fairly dark, I can dry brush this lighter blue over the top. So dry brush means I don't really have much water in my brush at all. And I'm not totally spreading it. I'm not totally covering up the bottom layer of dark so that I can see some of that darker. So it's a light touch thing. And I'll send you a picture when I get it done. It's funny because it's still too dark, but I'm starting to work that stuff out. I'm starting to get the layers in that I need to be able to add my lights. Same here. So in this case, now my brush is really dry. I'm going to get a little bit more white in here. Because as I'm looking at my strokes up here, I can see it's kind of lighter blue up on this side here. Can't really. Let's see. I want you to be able to see. Yep, you can kind of see it. So I'm getting lighter. Notice I haven't gone back to get any water on my brush in a while. So this color, I'm kind of sweeping it up here. It's kind of up here, comes over there. It doesn't really come down so much on this side, a touch. It's kind of more here. A little bit on this side. And then there's some really light blue. Let's see how light I can get with my blue. And remember, this is not just blue. This is a blue, phthalo blue, burnt sienna light mixture, right? This is not straight blue and white. If you get that, if you do that, it won't be. Yeah, I may have to wait till this dries. I may have to add my background in before I can really push the lights here. And I might even be using the wrong brush for it. So I'm going to send you what this looks like right now, because I want you to get how dark it still is, how okay that is in the process. Here we are. There we go. Do you see how that fur is laying on top? The blues are laying on top, but some of the orange is coming through. So now I really think the next thing I need to do is add a lighter background in, because if I don't, I'm still completely losing my goat. So let's see, I'm going to move this over just a touch so you can see that. We're going to push this up a little bit. Oh, annoying. Here, I'm going to move this paint down so that you can really see this guy. Now, if I want to, I can kind of work with the background that's here. This is kind of an orangey background. So I might try mixing like, I don't know, yellow and burnt sienna and a little bit of white to have a very, let's see what that looks like. We'll see. So I'm coming in here. And notice when I add my background, I am not avoiding the goat. I'm actually going right towards the edge. So if you've got a flat brush and you're afraid you're going to bleed into the thing, I don't know if you see what I'm doing here, but I'm actually laying my brush with paint, my flat brush with paint sort of right at the edge where the ear meets the background, and then I'm pulling back. So before you have, later you'll get better at brush control. You'll be able to do more things with your brushes, right, Janet? After a while, you get, the more practice you get, the better you get. You can see I can go either way. I can kind of scoot around, but that's because I do this all day long, right? All the time. So notice what that does to this side. Notice how all of a sudden this goat is looking a little bit. Oh, and look at, if I can use my background if my shape is wrong. So I think this is a little bit thin. I can actually bring it into the edge of the goat. So you can see why this is really important at this point. This is a funny color. It's kind of this weird mustard color. That wasn't what I was intending. That seems to be what's happening. I think it seems to be, and I'll send a picture of this over when it's through. So once again, here I am on the other side. Yellow is an interesting color in painting because our eye automatically goes to yellow first. So wherever you have yellow, that is directing the viewer to go to that area. Janet is using yellow very effectively right now in a painting that she's working on. I'll actually have her show you later on. So think when you use yellow that you better make sure your areas, okay, that's much better. Can you see how all of a sudden now I can start to balance out where my lights and my darks go? Where do I actually need lights and darks? Because now my dark isn't so strong. Yeah, Anik. Yep, that looks great. So yeah, just keep going if that's working for you. I'm going to send you. And by the way, you don't need to make your background yellow. You can make it blue, or you could do all kinds of things to it. I kind of like that red background. So now we're starting to get a little bit of push and pull. We're starting to get a little bit of the colors that are happening here, but we still need more detail in the eyes. So now it's time to come to the skinny pointy brush right here. And it's time to really look at, and here we're going to come over here and to look at the eyes. So I want to work now some of the details of the eyes, the nose, and the mouth to make them stand out more. So why are the eyes not standing out? Because they're too dark. They've been darkened by my, and they don't have enough detail around the edges of them. So animals often have, if you look really closely here, right? Animals often have these kind of really cool variations around their eyes. You can see, well, I just got phthalo blue over everything. So you can see here, if you look really close, this is quite a light area. And then next to it is a strong dark area, and then another light shape, and then a thin dark line, and then a light area for the iris, and then this really dark, crazy looking rectangular pupil, and then it's dark around the outside. And then, so if you want to work detail, really pay attention to the pieces. I'm going to take a close-up picture of this so you can really see what I'm doing here. So you can really see, and this is just a black and white, but if you're working detail, this is a great way. You can see in a lot of Sandra Mahler's paintings that her pastel drawings of the cats, that like where she gets the most detail in is in the eye area, not just the eye, but around the eye. So here's where I'm working. So now I'm working. Now I'm going to try and work this. I need this in front of me. Notice I have my source pretty close to me. I'm not thinking I can remember it. I feel like the first thing I need to do is, I need a little bit of kind of a yellowy golden, actually maybe kind of similar to my background color. I'm taking yellow, and you could do yellow ochre. I'm taking yellow and burnt sienna. And I'm adding this in with a teeny tiny pointy brush. This yellow. That helps, but it's not really enough. Oops, this might not be the right brush. You want a brush that really comes up to a point. You don't want a ragged edge for this, because if you get a ragged edge brush, yeah, this is not the right brush for this work. Let me find a better brush. It's funny, I do almost everything with a big brush. This is a better brush. It's got like, it comes up to a point more, so I can control it. Here's where I want my control. So this helps, but it's not really the finish. Right? Now, I'm going to start looking at some of the shapes around the edge. And actually, before I start looking at the dark shapes, I'm going to be light shapes. I'm going to be looking at the dark shapes. So I'm mixing ultramarine blue and burnt umber, which is a really great dark. And I'm looking and seeing, okay, right over here is this kind of dark shape. And it's fairly strong. It's like the outline eye, right? It's like eyeliner. And I want to make sure this is dark enough. And this comes down. You might find it's pretty easy on this side. It's kind of that little triangle, the tear duct. And over here. Right? This is detail work. So that's why it's good we're talking about it. We almost never have time to get to this place. So see what that does? See how that also pushes my eye forward? So now we're going to do the next thing. I'm looking at kind of okay, now I have to look at the color version. Yeah, this is sort of orangey white. So I'm mixing burnt sienna, a touch of blue and white. Mostly burnt sienna. Still using my little pointy brush here. So why do I notice that this is dark? Because right next to it is light, or light shapes. There's a light shape kind of up here. And there's this like light triangle here. And it comes down, a little white line. So see, the more I can do to kind of showcase, see how everything pulls that eye out? So are you guys following this? Is this helpful to see?
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. I know this is pretty detailed. It's fairly advanced, actually, right? Like this kind of work. But if you're wondering, I figure it helps you to see this. And then I see that I need to add in a little dark line kind of above here. It needs to get dark here. And then above here, I have a sort of light bluish. So it keeps going. You can keep going with the dark light. And yep, that's kind of one of those blue areas. So it's ultramarine, sorry, phthalo blue, burnt sienna, and white. So you see how I keep going back in. Notice that my hand is now covered with phthalo blue. Don't do that. That's a terrible habit. Terrible habit. I had it on the edge of my paintbrush because I used the edge of the paintbrush to open a thing of an open thing of paint. And anyways, now it's all over. I want burnt sienna. There we go. Now let's get the light that I want. Kind of trying to get the light. This is a light blue that's on top of. You'll notice phthalo blue really goes a long way. Okay, so up here, see how I'm continuing to kind of work up and down. And now I'm not just thinking about the eye. I'm kind of thinking about how does the eye meet the ear here? What is happening here? And it's everything is a little, the ear is very dark and everything here is kind of lighter. It's kind of crazy, isn't it? And then that might be a little bit too much. So I'm going to go in with a little bit of burnt brown just to kind of push it back a little bit. Might be too much there, too much. It's easy to kind of overdo your lights. There we go. That's a little bit better. And then it's kind of dark. See, it's like little triangles of dark that layer on top of each, dark and light that layer kind of on top of each other. So here, next to this light area is a dark triangle. So this is like a closer paying attention to the edges of where dark meets light. And then I'm like, oh, over here, I need a little bit. So you see how it allows you to kind of address, oh, I need something lighter. Now, so here, instead of drawing like every little piece of fur, I'm really just looking at the edge of where this dark triangle right in here meets this lighter one. So I don't have to draw every hair. And in fact, I probably have gone a little too far in lightening here. So I'm gonna darken a little bit. And you'll see it's real easy to do too much with your light. Ultimately, and now I'm coming in and adding in, there's a sort of a little dark, you know how all like goats and sheep seem to have that little heart shape here? Kind of up here on the top, there's a little dark heart there, a dark heart. And now I'm going to go back in with my lighter blue color and try and create just a little bit of texture, fur texture kind of right here. So you see, this is how you handle fur. And you'll see it's really easy for me to get too much with this little pen, with this little pointy brush. In fact, it's probably not the best for the job, but we're doing the best we can. If I really want to get totally detailed with this goat eye, even though you can't really see it here, I'll add a little white dot on the iris because that sort of shows light reflecting. So let me take a picture of that so you can see in more detail where we're at. So we can spend a whole bunch of time. Here we are. What's that? Here we are. Go ahead and send stuff in, you guys, if you're working. And you want me to look at anything, or if you're pleased with it and you want to show me. Here, I'll take even a picture of the eye close up so you can start to see what that looks like brush wise. So now I'm beginning to get that kind of touch. And look how much time I spent just on that area, because that's a pretty important area. Now I'm going to go over to the other eye. I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to look at the dark, light. So I see that right next to here is because the shadows are a little bit more intense on this side, I can see it's darker. There's this kind of dark triangle. So in we go. to try and get that happening. Okay, and now let me get some of the lights in. So let's see, there's like a little, like next to this triangle is a tiny little light triangle. I'm kind of making it a light blue right now. There we go. There's a light, because the lower lid of the eye is poking up, that's quite light. There's a little tiny light area. That's pretty important. There's these little tiny light areas within the dark. And then more importantly, there's this kind of medium light blue here that comes over, that kind of shapes the eye. So when we get into the sad thing about watercolor painting is we don't have this kind of flexibility in watercolor painting. like once you go too dark in an area, you can't lighten it. So we're going to have to be, this is why acrylic, really enjoy acrylic, because
Yeah, what are the specialities of watercolor? I mean, what is like with pastels? You said that they give the brightest. So like, what is good about watercolors?
oh, watercolor is amazing. It's just
It looks
super
amazing.
hard. It's super hard. Watercolor's
It's
more,
m-
I'm just saying it's harder. It's wonderful, but it's harder. You've got to be, that's why I cannot believe people who have no experience wanting to do, I shouldn't say that. I have a lot
That's
of people
me.
approach me saying they want to start watercolor.
Oh.
Yeah, but Sandra, you have
Mhm.
some art experience. Like,
Right.
I'm talking about the first thing, and hey, I'm not trying to scare anybody here off from doing watercolor. I'd say let's do it, but I'm like, do you know how hard this is? Do you have any idea how hard this is? It's really hard.
I think it's the most difficult, but
It's
at the same
definitely the most difficult.
I
Yeah,
think it's because when you look at people who are really good at it, they make it look easy.
right.
yeah,
It's
true.
very,
I must say.
so here we go, Rashmi. Let me tell you what I love about watercolor. What I love about watercolor is that it's the most for me, it's one of the most expressive mediums I've ever used because it's much more one-off. Like you kind of can't fight what you have to accept more what you do and work with that. So that is one of the things that makes it pretty great. But yeah, it's going to be full on. And don't worry, I'll start you off simple. I'm going to start you off simple. So that's the key, is to start simply with watercolor. If you find you don't want to do watercolor, you're welcome to do all of our subjects in acrylic, but you'll see it's a different layering process. So you'll be a little bit on your own in terms of how to layer things. If you feel like you're not ready for watercolor, please keep using acrylic or join my Sunday acrylic oil atelier painting class, which I will make available to you in April. And then you can come in and we'll be working on acrylic painting projects, oil and acrylic painting projects all year round. So you have options. But I think everybody should learn to do I just think everybody should learn to do all the things. Otherwise, you get kind of stuck in a rut and it's more uncomfortable, but you'll progress much faster, believe it or not. All right, so here is so I'm going to take a picture of where my eyes are right now, and then I'm going to come down and work my goatee nose using kind of a similar technique. So here, let me take a picture of this. And you can watch or work with me, along with me, or both. Here are the eyes. The eyes have it. I think I'm going to have to re-pull. I think I pushed down his eye a little bit, actually, before I jump in here. I lost his eye. Easy to do. I brought light too far down. And I kind of lost the edge of the eye here. So let's see if I can pull it back up. It should be, so I need to go. So see how easy it is to kind of lose things? I mean, I think that's the thing that's really a good lesson here. It's easy. You can see I kind of made him into a Picasso goat, you know, one eye here and one eye down by his nose. I totally made him uneven. So yeah, I'll let that sit for now and then I'll rework on that. Now I want to come and work on the nose.
As long
So
as
the
he can still see.
What's that?
As long as he can still see, it's okay.
I think he can still see. Yes, yes. So now I can see immediately that my nose is too thin. And here, I'll take a picture so you can, well, you've got it. It's too small, right? So my first job is kind of to cover that up and start again. What the? Okay. So I think I'm going to take some of my light kind of blue orange. So I'm going to try and bring out yeah, Annika, your guys' eye is looking, your guy on the left side is also looking a little like it came down, right? These
It does though in the picture, I think.
No, it doesn't. Look, it's
Oh.
lined up. They're lined up. See?
Okay.
Yep. Nope. That when you work and so make sure, I noticed that I did this, so I'm assuming you guys are making the same mistake. It's easy to make your goatee nose your animal nose is too small. So make sure they really kind of extend out. So I darkened where my nose was, and I'm pulling these light areas, which are right here, out much further. It's mixing with my dark. So that means it's not too light, which is nice. And then I've got a little bit down here, a little bit of light down here. And then I know there's this kind of light blue. It's a little bit lighter bluer here on the side. So one of the things that I know helps showcase my goat. And I also think, Annika, you might need a little bit more orange in your blue. It's looking a little bright.
Yeah.
Yeah, and unnatural. So I think you need a little bit. So now I might be emphasizing this a little too much, right? I'm going to go back and darken it. But I can see that there's this kind of light area around the dark parts of my goat's nose, and that it's flanked by this kind of darker area here. So I'm trying to capture that using this lighter blue. So there's I guess at the end of the day, what I'm really saying is you're going to, I really hate that phrase. It's a dumb phrase. But it does sort of clarify. This is in summary, what I'm telling you to do is to really notice that, like, you kind of push and pull using darks and lights when you're working an area to really showcase, and you may push them back, but you know, there's a lot of like back and forth that happens, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So see, it's the same thing as happening on this side, this part of the nose and the sort of jaw is lighter. So I'm pushing those forward, and then I'll decide later, oh, do I need to like push it back a little bit? Do I need to darken it a little bit? Okay, these white areas are really too big. They're too prominent. And then he's got a little bit of this little. So I'm going to put more dark on my brush. So see, there's a lot of this happening. I'm going back in and I'm thinning that out a little bit. So once I add my whites in, I then go back out. You'll see that a very little bit of white goes a long way. There's way more dark that you notice your whites, not because they're so big, but because they're next to dark areas. So here is where and then there's this kind of medium area in here. That's too light, but I'm starting with that, then darkening. Darkening. I kind of lost my light a little bit, but I can get it back. So you see how I'm sort of constantly pushing, I'm looking at each shape and then I'm seeing, okay, do I have the shapes next to this right? Nope, I think this is a little too far out. So this is what we mean by the detail work. Oh yeah, he's starting to come together. It's funny when you're working on it really clearly, sometimes you totally forget what it is you're working on. You're not even thinking, does this look good? You're just like, yeah, there we go. So this comes in here and then down here. Yeah, if you're really doing this right, you're not even really remembering what it is you're painting. You're just looking at the shapes. So although I really started out focusing on these white areas, in truth, what I realized was, oh, my dark areas aren't really dark enough. And I figured that out by adding the light areas surrounding it. Got it? So that's how you start making your decisions, as you look and you're like, okay, what's happening next to what I'm doing? Now I can go back in. Now I think I'm actually in a position to add these white areas where they are supposed to be. And look at how little that is, just not that much. And then a little bit down here. You should be tired after this process. This requires a lot of focus. I'm
The
coming.
day is just starting. We need to be sharp.
Not for them. Just for us on the West Coast. We're so far behind everybody else. I remember I went to college on the East Coast, which is 3 hours later than where I grew up in Seattle on the West Coast. And I remember actually being jealous of my friends on the East Coast going, oh, you've got like so much time, you know, like I'd be working on a project. Of course, I had the same amount of time they did. I just spent it badly. But I would want those extra hours, you know, to work on projects. Oh, that's nice, Sandra. Whose kitty is that?
It's a fox.
Oh, the fox. Okay.
Starts
Sorry, I just
badly.
looked at it. I didn't look at it very closely. I will honestly tell you.
Shall I send you the model
Beautiful.
picture?
Sure.
I changed the eye slightly to have a full eye, but it's from a calendar.
Okay. Yes, please. Oh, it's the sleeping fox. I think I've seen this one. It's kind of a famous image.
Yes, because they often sleep like that.
Right. They're so cute.
This is kind of watercolor, but a bit of gouache, which I've lost a bit. I mean, I'm not sure which is which anymore.
Oh, yeah, no, you could totally see this as a fox. Oh, little baby. So yeah, Sandra, one of the things we're going to talk about is there are areas you need to leave unpainted in watercolor. So that's the only thing I think you really, because we can't get this white back by paint. Why am I not? Come on. So I told my internet connection is unstable and it looks like there we go.
Your sound is a little bit unstable.
Yeah. It just happens. You can really see it here, right? That in watercolor, we just don't paint that.
Right.
So
on your picture, I can see it clearly.
Yep. So we're going to talk about that. Oh, Anik, that's coming along. Anybody else want to send theirs where they're coming? Annika, that is looking good. Yeah. So yeah, that's the thing. And if this was an acrylic painting, we could totally fix that. And now I'm going to start looking at and now I'm kind of going back over and looking at areas that need more work. I'm like, I want a little bit more kind of orangey. Might even add cadmium red. Yeah, you're here, aren't you?
I'm starting to work on a strange landscape.
Strange landscape. You want to send it over?
Yeah. A very strange landscape.
I'm noticing how warm and orange this part of the goat is. So I've actually added some cadmium red to my burnt sienna and yellow mix so I can get a little bit more warmth in this part of the neck. I like that better. And I'm going to bring it in a couple places up here. So now I'm looking to kind of brush out. I'm using the dry brush. Now that I've done some detail work, I'm now kind of going over and reviewing kind of bigger stroke areas. I also think this is looking a little bit too, let's see. Have fun. That's very West. That's very like move to LA. I like it. It's very got a LA vibe. It's like a driving on Route 66 or what have you.
It is Route 66.
Yep. Oh, good.
It's going to be for this project that I didn't say no to.
Well, you know, that just makes it easier for you. I'm changing my background because I feel like as the color faded, as it became less bright. Meow. So I'm going over now with just basic burnt sienna and white. Let's see. So Olga, did you forget class started at an hour early? I noticed the class.
I was late, but only like 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay, great. Natalia. Okay, great. I was like, hey, there's not that many people. I think people forgot. I'll try to remember to remind you guys next week that there's one more week of early classes, and I'll definitely remind you.
Yeah, I was actually working, so that's why I'm late. I remembered.
Okay, great.
For the record, I remembered.
Great. I was worried that, well, you know, it's confusing because it's only for a couple of weeks, and then you go back to more of we go back to a normal schedule. Yeah, this is at an interesting phase. Here, I'll take a picture of it. Keep sending it over. So does this answer some questions? As you guys are working, talk to me about what you're finding as you're doing this process. I am happy to, where you're struggling, what's feeling hard, what's feeling easy. You know, I'm happy to, this is a lot of you'll notice I'm going back and forth over areas I've already worked. Right? So I'm going back over here. I'm adding a little bit more blue here. I'm constantly reviewing and going over. It's not like any area is ever really done. Yeah, I want to do that. I'm taking a little break. I'm going to go make myself a cup of coffee. Whoops, and freezing again. What's going on here? It's weird. Only, oh yeah, no, I'm really frozen. Yep. And I actually got booted off the computer for a second. Sorry about that. Anyways, now here we are. You guys keep working. I love it. I love seeing all these heads bent over in concentration. Hold on.
Hmm? Okay. Darth Vader, isn't it?
Thanks.
Interesting. I feel like it just got better. There we go. That's better. Light got a little bit better. A couple of things here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, great. A couple of things here. Olga, your red panda is great.
Thank you.
And I want to credit you because I am noticing a maturation in your brushstrokes. So your fur, I think you've learned a lot about working your brushstrokes. Natalia and Rashmi, don't panic, right? Like you're at that point. So you're at a similar point there where I am, where it's easy to overdo the blue, right? So now our job is to go back with your flat brush, with a flat brush, and kind of look at the areas. I'm doing the same thing right now here, where I'm like looking at I see there's kind of orange here and a little bit of blue and some white and some blue. So I'm kind of coming in and brushing. I'm trying the dry brush to pull back some of the too much blue that I have here, right? I can see that my blue here. So now it's just where I'm looking at variations where light areas meet dark areas.
What is the color you're using right now?
Some
What's the mix
variation of blue and orange and white, right?
Oh, okay.
Just like with everything. So see how I'm kind of coming over here and kind of pushing it. So you're constantly revisiting. And then this one is more burnt umber. I think I need to get more of all my colors actually. So hold on, let me reload. And it might be at this point your colors are drying out, so you're not getting the best from them. So you might take a moment to reload up all the colors that are on this palette. So I'm putting more burnt umber on my palette. Get my burnt umber out. Put that right there. I want more of everything. Burnt umber, I need some more white. So take time to reload up all your colors that you're using. So I'm looking here, now I'm really looking at the color photo and I'm seeing that there's definitely more brown and maybe a touch of blue and maybe a teeny touch of white, but mostly brown and blue, mostly brown. So I'm trying to sort of bring in more, oh no, and I can see I need a little bit of burnt sienna kind of in here. So I'm bringing in more color. And then I've lost my light. So you see, it's really easy to kind of lose things. You go back and forth all the time. As you add one thing in, don't think, oh, I'm done. Think, okay, now what did I lose? As I step back, you're like, okay, as I work this detail, what did I lose? What do I need to bring back? Okay, I kind of lost my dark in here, so I'm bringing that back in. Right, as I worked everything, I lost my dark down here for sure. And I'm trying to create a kind of I'm trying not to cover everything so completely. I think that's the trickiest thing, is to just learn to drag softly. Yeah, that didn't. If you find that your tool, the brush that you've chosen isn't helping you, switch to another one. See if you can have better luck with a pointy brush if you're using it. So that's what this finishing is all about. It's all about losing and regaining. Does that make sense? So if you've lost it, now you're like, how do you go back and you're like, how do I regain this again? And artists will spend many hours back and forth. So it's not a failure to do that. It just is part of the process. As you work in detail, you then have to kind of step back out. So I think people get sort of obsessed with detail, but they don't think about the whole. So you get sort of attached to your detail, what you've added in there. And really what happens is once you get to a certain point, you may have to remove the detail because that's not what's good for the painting as a whole. It's good to focus on detail sometimes, but it isn't always what's needed. You know, sometimes you add too much detail. Janet's been going back and forth with the rooster on her painting, her current painting, like how much is needed of that rooster, right? I'm noticing that there's some transitional blue-brown shifts that I couldn't see in the black and white that I'm now adding in. So some areas are kind of, that I thought were blue are actually kind of brown. So I think that helps. Anyway, it's just a lot of like back and forth, back and forth. I think you are too, Anik. It looks great. Bravo.
Thank you. I just don't want to touch it just in case not to ruin it.
Right.
Overdoing is also bad.
I agree. You're totally prepping yourself for watercolor. I can see that. That's a very watercolor way of thinking. So, Anik, you've got a half an hour left. I want you to take another painting you haven't finished, and I want
I'm finishing a panda actually.
Oh,
So
yeah!
Panda wasn't like, no, the background and the detail. So
isn't it funny? It really helps to leave a painting for a day or two or even a week and then come back to it. It totally helps to be able to do that. Because we get so obsessed with like obsessive about details and controlling about the details and too overthinking. I mean, work is important, but you know, that's not all there is. There's we can get too obsessed with it. We get too attached to a particular detail, and that becomes problematic. So you need to be able to get both macro and micro, and that's the thing that's tough. If you're like, I just love this and I can't like get rid of it. And I just see that Janet said she had to go back to work, so I can't. I'll show you her painting, but we've been going back and forth on this rooster in the painting. And how much is the rooster serving the painting? I brought some question into whether this rooster served the painting. Janet was like, absolutely put the kibosh on getting rid of the rooster. So we worked on how to make that rooster fit in with the rest of her painting. Right, there we go. Oh, there you are. It's kind of fun. I know it's like tedious, but once again, you know me and tedious. I'm all about the tedious. Tedious is great. Tedious is where you can start to really become an art. That's when you've really, when it's tedious, when you're sort of precisely tediously working. This is where the magic happens.
You say so.
The tedious. Embrace the tedious. Isn't that what quarantine has taught us, to embrace the tedious?
Yeah. Maybe so.
Yeah, I think so. I struggle with it still. I mean, I don't like, I kind of fight, I can feel myself fighting myself in the studio a lot. I don't like, I have to keep submitting to tedium, to being a little bored. And when I'm working. And I'm not saying that doesn't mean I like what I do. Like, it just means there's kind of I have to own the tedium of it. There's a bridge I paint called the St. John's Bridge, and I've avoided painting it for about 1.5 years now, but it's a very popular bridge here. And so now somebody wants it and I've got to paint it. And it's tedious, this damn bridge. It's like really tedious. It's like lots of arches and lots of little details. And I have to kind of you have to sort of constantly recommit to it. I think painting is must be like marriage, right? Or relationship. You kind of have to keep recommitting to it. We think it should be magical all the time, but it's about accepting what we don't like and not avoiding the work that it'll take to change. So I think what I hope you're starting to learn is how much time it takes to do something in painting. And how do I put it? When is it, when can, at what point can you kind of scoot by and sort of keep things simple and unexpressed, and what areas just require work? What things? I've never raised kids, but I imagine toilet training is like this. Like toilet training a child.
Let's not start this topic.
Right. You're just it's a trauma, and it's just takes as long as it's gonna take. Hey, he's coming along.
I can tell you that painting signs is extremely tedious.
It's very tedious. Yes, it is. It's really tedious. You almost can't think of it as a sign. You've just got to think of it as shapes. Otherwise, you'll go mad.
I'm about to go mad.
Yep. All right, Diana. Embracing the tedium.
Yeah.
I'm about to go crazy. That's it. This thing is about to make me nuts. I got to tell you, secretly to myself, I was looking at this goat about half an hour ago and going, no. I'm bored with this. I don't want to finish this. So it's good that you all are here, because otherwise I probably wouldn't.
I moved the eye up.
Good. Was it tedious?
Sure. I mean, I felt I was done with this, and now it looks completely different, but it's a lot better.
Yeah. So there you go. That's the reason to do it, because when you look back at the end, you're like, hey, it looks better. That is the value of embracing tedium. is that you accomplish something at the end.
But the eyes are, they still don't look right.
Keep working around the edges of the eyes till you get
Yeah.
all the pieces.
I see that.
You lose pieces, you gain them. It's a little bit lighter on the top of the iris than it is on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Oh my God, I haven't even gotten to the horns. Tedious.
Mhm.
Yeah, Jessica and I were laughing about that the other day. We were like, so why do we do this? Oh, I guess the rewards are you can get things done.
Well, this thing, I don't know why I'm doing really.
You like to be forced to do things. You'll do it. You're a problem solver, Diana.
Thank you for saying so.
That's true. I know. I spend several days a week with you. I practically spend more time with you than I spend with my boyfriend. So notice how much I'm fixing my horns right now. My horns were way too small. So now I'm able to go back in and make them the size. Yep, getting there. Using kind of white and yellow and touch of blue. Goats and sheep have bumpy heads. That's what I'm really learning here. There's
They
all
have very
these.
big noses.
They have big noses and they have bumpy heads. They've got these sort
They
of
have bony heads, yeah.
bony, bumpy heads. Yeah, very bony heads. So like there's all these plane changes in the goat that you don't really notice at first, particularly around the eyes. Like I'm just looking up here at kind of like this bit that's rising into the horn, and then you can actually see kind of the top. If you look really closely, you can sort of see the top of the head. Getting there. Hey, I didn't say painting was easy. I just said it was doable. It's doable, but it's not easy.
Some things gets easier, but not a lot.
Yeah, some things get easier some days.
Yeah.
It's doable. So is getting physically fit and being a good parent and being good at your job, but it takes up a lot of time. I like this better.
Ay, ay, ay.
I keep making the white spots on the nose way more prominent than they should be. There we go. That might be it. And you'll find there's a detail, like a place where like Ani got to, where she's like, okay, I could work on this some more, but I also know if I do, I'm going to overwork it. So I'm going to call it done and move on to something else. And that's a really good thing to do, to know about oneself.
Ay, ay, ay.
Okay, yep. Back and forth, it's back and forth. All right, this I can see is a little bit too far out now.
Just gonna send you detail just for you to see how silly this is gonna get.
Not silly.
It is so silly. It is so silly.
Yeah, send it over.
Just sending a little detail.
Show us so we can see how you're submitting to the tedium.
Yeah.
As I think I've told you guys, I have a couple of people who in my life who have said, what? I love painting every minute. And I'm like, that's because you only do it like, 3 hours a week. Believe me, if you had to do it like 20 or 30, you would be bored with it too. Like you would find it like really boring, just like anything, right? Like just like any job or anything.
Okay, I sent it.
Yes. Okay.
That's what the sign is gonna be.
Let's see. Now I think I'm fun. And it's also important to stop and take a look, drink a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Oh. Rat 66. Oh, have fun with that.
I told you it's silly.
All right. But I like it. It's funny. Hey, Diana, I often find when I'm working signs, particularly when they're so prominent like that it'll help me at some point to go put it upside down to do the kind of final marks.
Numbers and
It just helps you to stop seeing it as a sign and start seeing it as shapes. That's my advice to you.
Yeah.
Having just had to do it myself.
I should probably do that, especially with the numbers there.
Yes. What shall we do for beginning drawing tomorrow? I know, do we want to keep doing animals or do we want to do? Okay. All right, Sandra, why don't you find an animal with good, give us some suggestions and I'll pick one.
Okay.
After this is done.
Right.
Unless we've already, Olga, I didn't even see your lion until right now. Is that pastels?
No, it's on iPad. It's digital art. I started
Oh, like Julia did. So is it easier? Yes.
It's easier.
Because you don't have to make that mark in the same way you would with a brush.
Yeah, and also because you can cancel some action. So you're painting something and then you can like cancel it, so it's easier to
It's good
adjust.
fracture, but it's good. You know, this is great, like fur texture here. You've got that. I feel like you're really starting to get fur.
What about the drawing? How does it help you?
Drawing, you're using a skill because you're using a tool.
No. I meant with the digital.
Oh.
It's also easier because on iPad it's easier to adjust something, but it's also like another technique, and it's more difficult at the beginning because you need to feel how to make it with Apple Pencil or with some other stylus. So
right, you're learning your tools.
Yeah.
Right, you're learning your tools. Yeah, it's let's see if I can get this to where it needs to be. Yeah, I think it can help, but it is a whole thing on its own. That is.
I just wondered because sometimes like the image looks exactly like the original.
Right.
So whether it actually gives you the outline or what.
No, you're still drawing, right? Right?
Yeah, you're still drawing.
You're still drawing. You don't get the outline from what I understand. You still have to draw it in. So you still have to get that part. But I think it's easier to get rid of what you've done, right? I think the hardest thing for many people is to go over what they've done with paint, like, right? Like or with an eraser. It's hard to let go of what you're doing. These are neat. Yeah, Lana. So I like this goat that you've got here. You've kind of lost your darks on this side. So add your background in first, and then go back in and with a small flat brush and browns like burnt sienna and burnt umber, go in and add some more browns back in here. But nice work. You know, it's a whole thing. You can see I've adjusted my background several times because it's bothering me. Oh, wait, here, I've got to get my plug. Hold on a second. Hold on. No, wait, come here, you. Come here. There we go. You know, it's interesting. I feel like these classes, like for all of you who, some of you I've been working with for a long time. Oh, Anik, that turned out well. Some of you have been working with for a long time. Others of you have just been working with for about a year. And I want to, you know, sort of point out that you have had a lot, all of you have had a lot of successes in these classes, like success after success, right? So there is a point where you get to learn, and you're at this stage right now. And I'm trying not to control the results, right? Because I can control the results a little bit more and make sure you have more and more and more and more success, which is true. But there's also a point where you just have to embrace the hard work and the back and forth. So you're now at this phase. And what I want you to understand is that failure really needs to be built into your model. Like, so like getting it, having something, losing it, bringing it back is all part of the process. And that is a patience, long haul. Painting is a long game. Art is a long game. You don't really get you can have successes every time, but you don't really get good at it for many years. You don't get good at it, like really good at it. I wouldn't call myself, I mean, I would call myself proficient, but I wouldn't call myself, there's a lot of people who are a lot better than I am. And I know it because they've been working longer, because they've been it's literally an hours thing. So there's a certain amount of this that's just getting in, struggling, and finding your way. You know what I mean? Like, so you're all now, you've graduated from little successes to more success, failure, success, failure, success, failure, success, failure. I just want you to be aware that as you go in this process and it gets harder, that is okay. Success is actually build failure into your model. And then what will happen is, and I do this too, is where do I keep kind of consistently failing so that I can start to look at ways to address that problem. You always have to fail enough at something that like you kind of know where your weak points are and you're able to address them. So, so this is all graduation. Welcome to the club.
I found a great animal for tomorrow.
Yeah?
Lemur.
Oh yeah, because they've got great. Let's see. Yes. We're totally. We should paint this one too. This would be
Yes,
a
I
great one.
was thinking it's a bit of a shame because of the eyes of not painting him too.
We'll paint him in watercolor when we do animals.
Great.
We'll totally paint him in watercolor. This is a great animal.
By
Yeah.
the way, I'm having my surgery on April 1st. Oh,
Of
that's a
all-
Thursday. That's okay.
Of all days.
I was afraid. I was afraid of missing an animal.
Is it going to be? Oh, we're not starting with animals in watercolor, so don't worry. We're going to start with like white cups. So it's a good one to miss. If
Your favorite, Sandra. Your favorite.
Yes. So yeah, don't worry. You're not missing anything.
Okay, good.
Where the way you practice with watercolor is I start you off with white objects so that you guys can start to see how to preserve your whites. So that's how we start. And it's fun. It's like actually really fun. And Rashmi, I think you're gonna, well, who knows? Maybe you'll hate it, but it's very different. You know, one of the things I'm doing by pushing you all along and not letting you get too comfortable in one medium is that I'm trying to get you to see the continuity. So not only the continuity of what is true about using all the mediums. And so that means you're a little uncomfortable all the time. You know what I mean? You never really get your footing in anything, but it also shows you really quickly how you do things. So I want you not to be afraid of the tools. I want you to know how to use the tools and to know how to use the thinking. So even though watercolor is so different, I think Rashmi, the other like sort of value of watercolor is it's so different in how we approach painting that I think you'll just appreciate it for that. Right? You'll have a new appreciation. And this is why you just don't do it right away. I want you to get used to a medium that's more correctable before we get into one that's a little bit less correctable. You have some painting experience. It'll translate over into what we're doing.
But also, is it like, I knew kind of watercolor was on my map to try next, but I don't think I would have done it.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you did. Right. Yes.
And I love it. And it's something that I want to master.
It's pretty great. There's something about it that's quicker. So what I like about it is the quickness of it. Yes. So it's really, watercolor is more about accepting your
whatever happens.
Yeah, whatever happens. Exactly. Your first go becomes much more important. And so knowing how to work with it. Yes, that's exactly right. Exactly, Sandra. And I gave myself the challenge last year. I've taken a couple watercolor classes actually, because it wasn't my medium that I was totally into. So I've studied with a couple of people. So I have some technique down, but also I did 100 watercolors last year during the 100-day challenge. And that really taught me a lot. about how great that medium was. So you'll like it, Rashmi. In some ways it's in some ways it's more fussy, in some ways it's less fussy than
No,
acrylic.
I'm looking forward to it, but whenever I've heard any of you talk about it, it's always
It's
about
hard.
how tough it is.
It's
So I just
hard.
wanted to know what are the good
Yeah.
things about it. Just
Yeah.
to be
Yeah, no, you're totally right. And I know I keep saying Rashmi, like as the only person I'm talking to. I'm actually talking about all of you. But I think you'll enjoy it. It's just a totally different experience of paint.
It's more like meditation.
You know,
Yeah.
one thing I'm getting obsessed with now is what's so-called line and wash. You know, with ink.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
That's
so
amazing.
fun.
I just love the way that looks.
And you know, we're going to go back to figure drawing on the Monday on this class. We'll go back to we'll do watercolor for a couple months, then we're going to do figure drawing for 2 months, then we're going to do portraiture again, then we're going to do ink, you know. So we're going to return to the things that you did last year. It'll be interesting to see how, of course, you don't have to if you don't want to. If you want to keep working in a thing, but the demos will move to those things. And you're going to be surprised. I'm very curious to see what happens to you the second year, right? The second time around, where all the skills are more, where you're more used to, all the skills are more used to it. You know, I think the thing about watercolor is the drawing has to be there, right? Your drawing, it really needs
Particularly
to
with line and wash, because it's ink.
Hi,
And
Emma.
I have one question about the drawing in watercolor.
Mhm.
So, are you using the normal pencil, or you're using
Yeah.
the watercolor pencil?
I use a normal pencil, but I'm happy to experiment with some watercolor pencils. I just use a normal pencil. I actually like the kind of grayness that the graphite provides. You know what I mean? Like I like that. I like that.
You mean you like to see the line?
I like to see the line. To me,
Well,
the
that's
line
what I
is
like about line and wash.
yeah.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Like to
I
see
used to-
those lines.
I used to use a black like a pen, not like ink pen, and then
Yes,
watercolor over this with for the flowers, and it was
that's
the
what I'm
effect
talking
was
about.
amazing. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really fun. You're combining more the wateriness of the, I think what's people like about watercolor is the texture. Like it's easier to get texture because the
like
watercolor
floating.
does this kind of control, this uncontrolled thing. So it's in some ways it's easier to create texture with watercolor. I'm just thinking about it now. I'm like,
I like the fact that it looks like it's gonna float off the picture in a moment.
yes, and that you don't have to do that much work. You just it just happens accidentally. So you won't believe it, you guys. It's actually 10 o'clock right now. It's like class is over. So I would like to see.
I finished 3 paintings.
Yes, so that's the idea. All right. So a couple of things I want to talk to you about. One is that on Thursday mornings, Thursday morning our time, Thursday evening your time, Diana does a open studio where you can just bring whatever you want for 2 hours. So we're going to resend that. I'm not putting that on the website right now because it's confusing. The Zoom link is different, but I'm going to re-add the Zoom link to all these classes. And I would totally encourage you to do that because it's a place where you can come hang out. Diana knows a lot about painting. And so she can help you if you need it. So that's one thing that I want to encourage you to do. The second thing is that I will be adding onto your schedule of classes that you could take starting in April, a Sunday evening for you, afternoon for East Coast, 11 a.m. for West Coast, acrylic and oil painting atelier, which will be going all year. So when I say acrylic and oil, I mean, I'm going to be switching over to oil. So those of you who want to learn oil can do that. But if you're not comfortable using oil, you can do acrylic painting just like we do, similarly to how we do oil.
What
And
happens at the pastel class, which is already there on Sunday?
Yeah. It's I haven't added it in yet. It's a private class, which I'm now making available to you guys starting in
Is it going to
April.
clash with pastels or not?
No, it's right after. It's right
Okay.
after. So you could do all, and it's a 3-hour class. So
Good.
what we will eventually be moving to is more complex subjects. Like I'm going to have you do a still life that you set up yourself, right? So that you're working from life. And Alana was requesting portrait painting, which I think is a good idea. So maybe we'll try some portrait painting towards the end of the year. So if you're wanting to if you want to learn how to use oil, you should jump into this class. And B, if you want to keep doing acrylic, if you want to keep following acrylic and / oil demos, you can join the Sunday class. And it's full on because it's 3 hours. It's really long. So all of that will be available to you guys starting in April. And then starting in June, hopefully an abstract painting class will be added. So you're just getting, I know, right? Like totally different, all kinds of fun stuff. And Emma, thank you so much for sending me new kids class clients. I do have a kids class on Sundays. I'm not teaching it, but somebody else is. And it's not very expensive, just $10 per kid per class. So if you guys know anybody who wants to teach their kids ages 7 to 13 to do little art projects on Sundays, totally they're welcome to join that class. So great work, everybody. What is since we're here, hold your work up. Oh God, you totally can't see it here. Hold on.
Hey.
Yeah, I have my.
Oh yeah, it looks so great. Sandra, that turned out great. Emma, very nice. Emma, you're becoming quite, Annika, Emma, Natalia, Olga, Rashmi. I want to tell you, all of you, I see you improving by leaps and bounds. Sandra, all of you. I see everybody. Lana, you and Eugene too. I see you improving by leaps and bounds. Yeah, wonderful. So, right, Sandra, it's fun to have like projects that you're juggling. So if you don't feel like doing the class, just jump in and watch and do your own thing. That's like, you can kind of listen. What I'm talking about will often refer to like what you're talking about.
Right.
So I will try to send reminders through the class thread. Remember, Europe and England, you start an hour earlier than normal tomorrow, Sunday, and next week. And then you guys go into daylight savings time, and then we'll be back on your normal schedule.
Yeah. When did you say the Sunday class starts?
It'll start at 11 a.m. my time. So basically right after.
But from when?
Oh,
From
April
this?
1st, April 1st,
Okay.
the 1st of April. So
Okay.
I'll try to send out a note to everybody reminding you of all the updates.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, great work. I'm very proud of you all. You're doing great work. Great work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
All right,
you.
you guys, we'll see you, some of you tomorrow, some of you next week. Take care.
Okay.
Have a good weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.